Hello and welcome back to the Virtual Mac YouTube channel. On this channel you can find the latest news about Azure Virtual Desktop, Windows 365, Intune, Nerdio, Entra ID and much more. In today's video we're going to do a comparison between Windows 365 and Azure Virtual Desktop and then hopefully help you decide which is the best service for you and your business. So hopefully by the end of this video you'll have a much better understanding about which is the right service for you and your business. This is a conversation that I have often with customers, and probably at least a couple of times a week. Most of the customers who I work with today are Azure Virtual Desktop customers, and they want to know about the Windows 365 service and capabilities, and should we be looking at Windows 365 or should we be moving some desktops over to Windows 365? So what I'll do on today's video, I'm basically going to walk through the same conversation that I have with the customers, so to help them decide, because it's certainly not a Windows 365 or Azure Virtual Desktop conversation. Most of the time it's Azure Virtual Desktop and Windows 365 conversation, because they are two very different technologies and they both have very different use cases. So what I always say to customers is we always need to make the best business scenario fit with the technology. Okay, so that's the conversation that we're going to have today. So we're going to look at this from two sides of the fence. We're going to look at it from the admin's point of view, and then we're going to look at it from the finance point of view. Okay, so first of all, let's describe the main differences between the two services. So Windows 365 is a subscription based service. Okay, it's a licensed service, whereas Azure Virtual Desktop is a consumption based service. It's an Azure service, right? That's the main core difference between these two products. Okay, Windows 365 you're paying a flat fee per month. Azure Virtual Desktop you're paying on what you use. Okay, so it's consumption based. So to me, that's the conversation that I normally have with customers. Like, is it a cost conversation? Okay, the other side to the fence is around the management, right? So they're both very different from a management point of view. So Windows 365 is extremely simple to deploy. Okay, it's managed from the Intune console. Your devices will be managed by Intune. So if you're very Intune heavy, Windows 365 is a great solution, okay, because it'll just fit right into your existing environment. Whereas Azure Virtual Desktop, okay, has multiple components to it, right? But it's a lot more customizable to your specific needs, okay? So what we normally see with customers is it depends on how they want that management experience to be. If they're after simplified management and happy to pay potentially a bit extra for the cost, we'll come into the cost shortly and do some comparisons, then Windows 365 is a great solution. Whereas if they want a highly customizable environment, or if they have remote apps, or if they have GPU VMs, or if there needs to be very specific about how the environment's configured and what they can see and what they do, Azure Virtual Desktop is a great solution. Okay, so they're both great solutions, right? But you need to look at it from a high level point of view about what your business requirements are and what your technical requirements are, and which of these two products fits into that bucket. Okay, but as I mentioned previously, sometimes it can be both. We may have a use case where Azure Virtual Desktops make sense. We may have another use case with another business department where Windows 365 makes sense. Okay, so both of the products are meant to complement each other. It shouldn't be a Windows 365 versus Azure Virtual Desktop conversation. It should be a which one fits my use case. Okay, all right, so let's go and look at the consoles, and then we'll just do some side-by-side comparisons, and then that'll give you a much better idea of what I've just been talking about here. So now we're going to look at the comparison between the two different services. We'll look at the consoles, we'll see what the main differences are from an admin perspective. Then we'll look at the price differences of the two as well, to see what it looks like from a cost perspective. Okay, all right, so first of all we'll go with Windows 365. So I'm just going to share my screen. Hopefully you can all see that. So this is basically the Windows 365 management console, right? So you'll notice it's actually within Intune. Yeah, so we manage Windows 365 from the native Intune console. Okay, so that's what I mean, where when you start managing Windows 365 desktops, you'll more than likely be integrating them into Intune quite heavily, right? So basically what we do to create Windows 365 desktops, we create something called a provisioning policy, right? So a provisioning policy is what enables you to deploy the settings, so we configure what regions they want, that kind of thing. So if I just quickly show you what that looks like, so let's go into here, great, test one. We select the license type, enterprise or frontline. So I won't go into differences between the two here, but for this demo, we're just going to do frontline. And then we can do enter ID join or hybrid enter ID join. So you can join these to your enter ID directory services if you wanted to as well. Or you can just do Microsoft enter ID join, which is what most people seem to be doing. We can also leverage existing Azure connections as well. Or we can do the Microsoft hosted network if all require is internet connectivity. So I can just select like United Kingdom region, and we can configure single sign-on capability. We just select our image, and we can do custom images as well if we wanted to. So just click like next for that. I'm going to select the default one, configuration. So I'm just going to set that as like United Kingdom. Cloud PC naming, so you can do custom naming if you wanted to, and then you can use auto patch to configure that as well. I don't have that configured, so we'll click next. We can click scope tags, click assignments, and then review and create. So assignments are basically can add groups, so we can manage these via enter ID groups if you wanted to. Basically do click next, and that's it. That is literally all you have to do. Okay, so that's why a lot of kind of admins love Windows 365 because it just makes it so easy, right? Now, obviously, there's other stuff that you had to do around deploy, assign licensing and stuff, but from actually deploying desktops point of view, that's literally all you have to do. And then obviously you would deploy your Intune applications onto those desktops. So you would treat it same as you would do with a physical device. Okay, so from a admin effort perspective, not much effort at all. And then once you've created all those desktops, if I just go to my devices tab, we basically see all the existing desktops, and then we can do stuff like reprovision. So if I just click into this one here, you'll be able to do stuff like restart, restore, reprovision, resize, that kind of thing. So let me just show you that quickly. So yeah, so I can go into the like restart, restore, reprovision, resize desktops. So everything's managed from the Intune console. Okay. All right. So that's how we basically manage a Windows 365 environment. So now let's go and look at how we would manage a Azure Virtual Desktop environment. This is the Azure Virtual Desktop console within the Azure portal. All right. So first big difference, obviously, with Windows 365, we're managing it via the Intune console. With Azure Virtual Desktop, we're managing it via the Azure console. Okay, because Azure Virtual Desktop is an Azure service. So basically, with Windows 365, we were literally just provisioning desktops. With Azure Virtual Desktop, we have the concept of host pools. Okay, workspaces. So essentially, we would create a host pool, which can be different types of host pools. So we'll just go into here and we'll see that from there. So I'm just going to select the resource crew 1 second. So set the name of the host pool. So I can do YouTube test, for example. I can select my location. So previously we did UK South. Now here we can see what type of app group type. So as I mentioned, we can do remote apps with Azure Virtual Desktop. So if we're just publishing like a small number of applications, as in like 1 or 2 applications, we can just make those applications available to a user rather than just a desktop, which makes it a lot more cost effective. Okay, so if all you're doing is want to provide some applications, then Azure Virtual Desktop's a great solution for that. Or we can do full desktops as well. And then we can do pulled or personal host types, right? So obviously with Windows 365, we were just provisioning desktops. with hostable types, we provision session hosts, right? So if I had a pooled host pool, for example, that means I'm sharing a number of session hosts along with a bunch of users, right? And that makes it cost effective as well, because I'm sharing that cost. So maybe I'd have a bigger host, so rather than have like 2 cores and 4 or 8 gigs of RAM, I'd maybe have like a 16 core host with like 64 gigs of RAM. So I can put 10 users on it. So we can spread that cost out a lot more. So sometimes it can be more cost effective that way. Or we can have personal desktops. Okay. So same as Windows 365, but we'll go into the cost differences between the two shortly. So let's go to virtual machines. So we're going to click add virtual machines. Again, we select the name convention pretty much as we were previously. And then we have the virtual machine location. So I can go to like UK South, for example. Can pick my availability zones. I can select like trusted launch machines, secure boot, VTPM. Obviously, with Windows 365, most of these are going to be available anyway. We can select my image. So again, we can do custom images if we want to, or we can just use the default built-in images from Microsoft. If I wanted to create like 5 VMs in there, I could just go and do that. We can select our OS disk type, we can select the size of the disk, we can select what version network, what domain to join. So I can do enter ID, for example. And then we can select like the local username and password for the virtual machine administrator account as well. Okay. So as you can see, it's a lot more configurable. So I'm just going to go through and select those, click next advanced. We don't need to do that. Select tags, preview, create, and done, and that's it. And that'll basically just go and create a host pool. Okay, so obviously, yes, the experience through Windows 365 was a lot simpler, but the Azure Virtual Desktop is a lot more customizable to your needs and what you want out of those desktops. So what if you wanted to manage both solutions and have one central pane of glass? There's a tool called Nerdio. Disclaimer, I work for Nerdio. But from that, we can have like a central management console where we can manage Windows 365 desktops and also Azure Virtual Desktops as well. Okay, so you can really fit those both scenarios. That can be the most cost-effective solution for you, right? So let's have a quick look and see what that looks like. So this is the Nerdio console. And as you can see here, I can do pretty much the same thing that we did within the Microsoft console. So I can go in here, I can create my provisioning policy. So again, we've made it a lot simpler. So I could just go in here, type in test policy, pick my license, pick my images, but Nerdio can also manage the images as well. So for example, if I wanted to use the same image for the Windows 365 and also Azure Virtual Desktop, we can do that. But for this test, I'll just pick like the latest image. So let's go for Windows 11 23H2. Okay, and then we can select our region again that we wanted to. So where is the UK? Where have you gone? English United Kingdom. Again, we can pick the network that we choose. So let me go for a built-in network. So I'm going to pick like United Kingdom. And we're going to do that UK South, and then again we can do the group assignment. So very, very similar to what we could do with Microsoft Console, just a bit simplified. And then once we've got that, we can again manage our Windows 365 desktops the same way that we could do within the Microsoft Console, just with a bit of added. It's a bit nicer to look at. So from here I can see the devices, but I can also look at the Intune compliance policies and stuff and see when they were last synced, and then I can perform device actions like rename, change user, rotate the last password, restart, reprovision, restore, resize, that kind of thing. So a bit of added functionality within there as well. But what it also means is I can also go into and manage all my Azure Virtual Desktop session hosts as well. Right, so I can go into here and see which session hosts are in here. So I can go to attach, I can power on, restart, but we can also do like advanced auto-scaling configurations as well. So that's also very, very useful to bring that cost down. Okay, so yeah, that's how we can manage both. So that's how we manage Windows 365 that's how we can manage Azure Virtual Desktop, and now also we can manage both Windows 365 and Azure Virtual Desktop in the Nerdio management console, and that really reduces the admin overhead and makes it a much easier solution to manage. Okay, all right, so now we're going to look at the cost differences. Okay, so that's coming next. Okay, so now let's look at the costs and see what Windows 365 is going to cost us, and see what Azure Virtual Desktop single session, and then also Azure Virtual Desktop multi-session, and then just compare the three together just to see what that looks like. Okay, so this is the Windows 365 licensing page. So there's a couple of different SKUs obviously that you can have. So this is the per user pricing. So we've got 2 CPUs, we've got 4 CPUs, we've got 8 CPUs or 16 CPUs. Okay, but obviously the more you have, the more expensive it gets. So let's pick a common SKU. So a common SKU which I basically see out there would be 2 CPUs and 8 gigs of RAM. Right, that's probably the most common. For power users, I'd probably recommend 4 CPUs and 16 gigs of RAM. Right, so if I wanted to take the minimum, which is 2 CPUs and 8 gigs of RAM, which is fine for office workers, just your office, your teams, that kind of thing, we're looking at £38 a month. Okay, £38 and 10p. So if I were 10 users, that would cost me £380 and 10p a month. Okay. Now, obviously, if you are a larger customer or you have a relationship with Microsoft, you can get discounts to that. So this is purely just the retail price, which is publicly available. So yeah, so £380 a month and 10p. That's what it's going to cost us for 10 users, for 2 CPUs and 8 gigs of RAM. Okay, so now let's go and see what the same would cost us within Azure Virtual Desktop. Okay, so now let's look at the cost differences between a Windows 365 desktop and a Azure Virtual Desktop single session desktop running about 40 hours a week. Right, so we're going to use Nerdio's model tool to show us what that cost difference would be, and then you'll be able to see what that would look like. Okay, so just going to flick over to my other screen. So here you can see the Nerdio cost modeler, so it'll tell us what those costs are. So we're going to do single session desktop. We're going to do hostport name, so single, and then we're going to pick the single user desktop personal. All right, we're going to have 10 users, and they're going to be in UK South. Right, so I'm going to click next. We are going to pick a D2S V5 VM. Okay, so that's 2 cores and 8 gigs of RAM, so that's the latest V5 SKU. And we can do a comparison against reserved instances here as well. So reserved instance is somewhere where you can pay it up front essentially for the VM. So just a quick comparison, so if I had the reserved instance for 3 years, it'll bring the cost down to £210, or 1 year it would be £223. No reserved instances, £250. Right, but it all depends on how many hours you're using those VMs. Right, so we're going to click next. So I'm going to go next on here. We're going to click next for marketplace image. We're going to do Monday to Friday, 9 AM till 6 PM. So yeah, that's the average workday. We're going to click next here. We're not going to use FH Logic profiles because we don't need those because they're single session desktops. Well, that basically spits out this summary. Okay, so let's take a look at what this is saying. So the Nerdio optimized cost is essentially with all the Nerdio auto scaling settings in there, and it's basically telling us that that desktop will be around £25 per user, with the total cost of the compute and the disk and the network comes to around £250 a month. All right, that's for 10 users. So that would works out to £25 and 7p per user. Okay, so that's compared to like £38 for the Windows 365 desktop, and obviously that's not that much more expensive. So obviously the Windows 365 desktop came out at £38 per user. This is £25 per user, so it's going to be 5, 6, 7, 8, £13 a month cheaper. But it goes back to that question: are you prepared to pay that £13 a month for easier management and easier deployment, that type of thing. Obviously for 10 users, that cost will be like £130, and obviously the more users that you have, the bigger cost difference that is also going to be as well. Okay, so in my head, it just comes back to, do you want a nice, easy, simple experience where your management overhead is very low? If you do, Windows 365 is a great solution. If you want to be a bit more cost effective and have more control over what you can deploy, as you can see here, then Azure Virtual Desktop's a great solution. So again, it depends on use case. As we mentioned before, remote apps, GPUs, lots of different things to play into it here. Now, the final comparison that I'm going to do is around the Azure Virtual Desktop multi-session hosts, right? Because that's where we're sharing a desktop amongst multiple users, and that can work out very, very cost effective as well. So let's do that next. Okay, so now let's go and flick over, and then we will do this. So model name, so I'm going to do this multi-user. Okay, description, next. So here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to select multi-user port. So hostport name, I'm going to select that as multi. Total number of users in the port, we're going to have 10. Okay. Again, we're going to have UK South. Right, so we're going to select next. So here's where we're going to select the SKU. So here's where it gets a bit different to what we were doing previously. So we're going to select heavy workloads. I'm going to select maybe a D16, or maybe now I'll pick a D8. D8 ASV5. Okay, that's what we'll do. And then we're going to pick it, say we defaulted to premium SSD rather than standard SSD, because it's going to be a multi-session host as well. And we've got 2 users per vCPU, right? So that's automatically going to work out how many session hosts that we need. So for 10 users, we should be, so we should be okay. All right, so let's click next. We're going to pick a default marketplace image. Work hours, again, we're going to do the same work hours, right? Monday to Friday, 9 a.m. till 6 p.m. We're going to do next. We're going to use FSLT profiles, and we're going to use Azure Files Premium. Again, we can just do quick comparisons. If we wanted to use your NetApp files, for example, I can do that, and it'll tell me what the extra cost would that be for that. But for this one, we're just going to use Azure Files Premium, and then we've got a profile size of like 30 gigs. Okay, and there you go. So that's spit out like the host port cost is going to be £122 a month for that. And you can see there we've got the Nerdio optimized savings in there as well, and the per user cost is down to like £12.22p. Okay, so let's do a quick comparison of where we're at. So we have the Windows 365 cost at £38 per desktop per user, okay, based on 10 users. We have the Azure Virtual Desktop single session cost, which is going to be with the auto scaling settings in place. That's gives them the per user cost of £25 a month. Okay, and then we have the multi-session cost, which is actually giving us a cost of £12 per month. Okay, so they're the three cost differences. Now, obviously, we need to take into consideration lots of other factors, and the biggest being like management, right? The fact that with the Windows 365, very low management overhead. Azure Virtual Desktop, bit more complicated to manage, but if you're using a tool like Nerdio, it makes it much easier to manage. Plus, also you get to manage them both in a single session, in a single pane of glass. So another common thing which I get with customers is if they want to do chargeback to a business, for example, right? So if you're running IT as kind of central business unit, and you want an easy way of charging the cost back to that business unit, sometimes where you got Windows 365, because it's a line item on the bill essentially, it's a set cost, it won't change, then that's very easy to do. Whereas with Azure Virtual Desktop, is consumption, that number's going to change, so that becomes a bit more difficult to do. So I guess in summary, if you want a really simple admin user experience, something which is super simple to manage, something that you know what that set cost is going to be, Windows 365 is a great solution, but you're going to pay a bit extra for that simplicity. If you're after something which is highly customizable, you need those remote apps, you need those GPUs, and cost is the biggest priority. Then multi-session if you can, because again in this scenario it was like £38 a user versus £12 a user. So yeah, that's my summary. So Windows 365, really simple to use, great solution, license per user, subscription model. Azure Virtual Desktop can be cheaper than Windows 365, highly customizable, but you need that skill set to run that. But Nerdio really helps with that, with their solution to really simplify that management experience. So that's my summary. I hope you found this video useful, just to give you some stuff to think about. But definitely there's a lot more to this, but I'll probably dive deeper in another one of these videos where we look at like application deployments or image management and that kind of thing. But yeah, that's my summary. That's the conversation that I generally have with a lot of customers when we start to look at this. Some choose Windows 365, some choose Azure Virtual Desktop. There's no right answer, there's no wrong answer. It's all whatever your business requirements are, what your technical requirements are, what's in your environment. There's so many different factors involved with this, but these are the general guidelines that I use when having discussions with customers. Okay, all right, that's it from me this week. Hope to see you next week with another video. Thank you. Goodbye.